On Mark Dolan tonight, in the big question, are second homes morally wrong? My Mark Meets guest has been on quite the journey. Jessica Alves is a British-Brazilian TV personality known previously as the human Ken doll. She was born Rodrigo Alves and has had dozens of plastic surgery treatments to change her appearance and her gender, and she spent £500,000. She is unrecognisable as the person she once was. So why did she do it? And why is she planning to go back under the surgeon's knife? She'll be telling me live in the studio at 10. Also in the second hour of the show, in my take at 10, why the BBC have hired a misinformation officer. That's right, a misinformation officer. Even though, whether it's COVID or Brexit, this taxpayer-funded organisation has indulged in plenty of fake news themselves over the years. Plus US news with the queen of US showbiz royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield, and in my big opinion, in just 3 minutes' time, why the ever-political Archbishop of Canterbury is destroying the Church of England. May God forgive him. Don't miss my sermon in 3 minutes' time. But first, the heavenly Bethany Elsey.
Mark, thank you. Good evening. I am Bethany Elsey, here to bring you up to date from the GB newsroom. The man accused of stabbing author Sir Salman Rushdie has pleaded not guilty on charges of attempted murder and assault. 24-year-old Hadi Mattar appeared at court earlier after allegedly attacking Sir Salman on stage in New York State yesterday. The 75-year-old remains in hospital and on a ventilator. His agent says he may lose an eye and that he sustained nerve and liver damage. He's faced death threats over his writing, most notably from Islamists in 1989 over the satanic verses. Well, Imam Ibrahim Mogra says Muslims he's spoken to condemn the attack.
No one wanted to see that happen. That's not what Islam condones. We are not allowed to take the law into our own hands. Vigilantism is not permitted. And I don't know of anyone who is rejoicing from news of what has happened.
Rail industry bosses and the union group ASLEF are expected to hold formal talks next week over strike action that has left most of the UK network crippled today. Drivers at 9 train companies walked out in a dispute over jobs, pay and conditions. Picket lines were set up in several areas, including Ashford, London, Hull, Manchester and Liverpool. ASLEF claims their drivers haven't had a pay increase for 3 years. There are warnings drought conditions in parts of England could last until next year. England is experiencing its driest summer for half a century, and the Environment Agency says it would take weeks' worth of rain to replenish water sources. More extreme heat is expected in the south of the country this weekend, while the north is set to be hit by thunderstorms and floods. Amber weather warnings have been issued. And an 82-year-old man has climbed the final mountain in his challenge to bag all of Scotland's 282 Munros. Nick Gardner was greeted with a piper and a guard of honour from fellow climbers who cheered him on as he reached the summit of Cairngorm earlier today. The grandfather of 4 has spent the last 2 years climbing the highest peaks and raising money for charities Alzheimer's Scotland and the Royal Osteoporosis Society.
What I wanted to do was increase awareness, and I've done it. So that's been successful. Yeah, the fact that the challenge has been successful is immaterial. The fact that I've made the public more aware of these diseases, that's the real success to me.
I think he deserves a nice big hot cup of tea after that. On TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now, let's get back to Mark.
Many thanks to Bethany, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Another action-packed show for you. And in keeping with the weather, it's a scorcher. In the big question, are second homes morally wrong? My Mark Meets guest has been on quite the journey. Jessica Alves is a Brazilian-British TV personality, previously known as the human Ken doll. She was born Rodrigo Alves and has had over 100 plastic surgery treatments and spent over £500,000 to change her appearance and her gender. She's unrecognisable as the person she once was. Why did she do it? And why is she planning to go back under the surgeon's knife? She tells her story live in the studio at 10. Also in the second hour of the show, in my take at 10, why the BBC has hired a misinformation officer. How ironic. And in the news agenda with my panel, is the era of convenient low-cost travel over? Should more be done to protect authors and artists from being attacked? Are disposable barbecues a menace? And lots more burning issues of the day. Reacting to that and much more are my brilliant panel of TV royalty, actress and reality star Daniela Westbrook, journalist, political commentator and author Ella Whelan, and Olympian and British national treasure Chris Akabusi. We've also got the queen of US showbiz and royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield, live from Hollywood, California. She'll be talking about the tragic death of Olivia Newton-John. Donald Trump will be coming up, as he often does. And indeed, we'll be discussing how a decision to build a wall to keep migrants out is causing a political stir stateside. Now, I want to hear from you throughout the show. Mark at gbnews.uk. This show's got a golden rule. What is that rule? Faye, any ideas? Sebastian? There you are. There's my camera. We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. So there you go. 2 big hours to come. Glad the directors are concentrating tonight. Big opinions, big debates, and big guests. Let's get cracking. Lord forgive us. The Archbishop of Canterbury has spoken out on the subject of climate change. He said climate change, better called the climate crisis, or better still, the climate emergency as we know, is the result of wealthier countries having declared war on God's creation, unknowingly, unthinkingly, starting from the 19th century. So there you go. It's all our fault. It's all our fault. And we here in the UK will have to pay the price. Don't worry about China, India, Brazil or the US. Nothing to see here. Now, I want to look after the planet and hand it to the next generation in a better state than we found it. Who doesn't want clean, sustainable energy and less polluted air? But I'm afraid that all we've had on this from the ever-political Archbishop is hot air. It's green levies on fuel and a 3-decade focus on so-called renewables, which mean that the poor, about whom the Archbishop claims to worry so much, may face bills of up to £4,000 next year just to heat and power their homes. Where's the empathy now, Archbishop? And it's the ideological focus on carbon emissions at the expense of any realistic, sensible, long-term energy strategy or thought for the economy, which is now at the root of so much suffering in this country and across the Western world. Go woke, no smoke. We listened to the Green zealots, of whom the Archbishop is so supportive, by not ordering nuclear power stations and by ignoring the God-given resources that lie beneath our feet. 50 years of gas, 100 years of coal, 20 years of shale gas. The good Lord has granted us these gifts, which we have spurned. More fool us. And why didn't Welby speak out about lockdowns, which have created so many mental health issues, which have led to what could ultimately be a 12 million long NHS waiting list, and which have smashed the economy and destroyed people's livelihoods? Find me a single quote from this man, the Archbishop of Canterbury, about the madness of lockdowns, given that he's got an opinion on so much else. And ask him why the Church of England closed their doors in the course of the pandemic. People struggling, people isolated, people in need. Parishioners who were desperate for support from the church, who wanted to pray together or mourn lost loved ones, were cruelly exiled. I don't remember Welby begging the government to let him fling open the doors of churches. Remember, places of worship, gyms, swimming pools, children's playgrounds and GP surgeries were chained shut, whilst supermarkets, pubs and fast food outlets remained open. Go figure. During the pandemic, the Church of England turned its back on parishioners at a time when it was needed most. May God forgive them. Welby also doesn't like the Rwanda plan to process asylum applications abroad. Not a squeak of humble acknowledgement from him when, thanks to the Mail on Sunday last weekend, it emerged that in June and July of this year, 40% of said individuals entering the country illegally were from Albania, a country that hasn't seen conflict in a quarter of a century. It's more peaceful than the bloody Galapagos Islands. The Rwanda policy, whilst not perfect, and who knows if it will work, is an attempt at least to end human trafficking and an evil business model in which gangsters send hopeful young people on a perilous journey. The old Archbishop seems to be supportive of that because that's why he blocks every plan to break this business model. May God forgive him. Lockdowns, climate change, Britain's borders, the Church of England have taken an explicitly political view on all of the above. And what's worse, in my view, is that they've made the wrong call. Debatable green policies are diminishing and damaging lives. Lockdowns diminished and damaged lives. And many more will perish until the cruel business model of people trafficking across the English Channel is stopped. The Archbishop should take a leaf out of the Queen's book and stay out of politics. But like Prince Charles, William and Harry, he's another unelected member of the elite who just can't help himself. I'm afraid, like so many of our great institutions, the Church of England have been drinking the woke Kool-Aid. And England's official church isn't even a home for spiritual ideas or diversity anymore. It was the Church of England who refused the ordination of Calvin Robinson, a deeply spiritual man and a huge star here at GBNews. Calvin was refused ordination because of his traditional conservative opinions. Not really a broad church, is it? The idea of woke political correctness in the Church of England reached its nadir when a white minister, the Bishop of London, Sarah Mullally, decided to explain to Calvin Robinson, a man of mixed race heritage, all about racism. It's what I call white-splaining, and it's in the woke playbook. Mullally went doolally, a smug white woman explaining racism to a black man. How very 2022. And refusing him entry as a serving cleric for having the wrong opinions. Welcome to the modern, new-look, plant-based Church of England 2.0. Illiberal, heartless, and its doors closed to those who don't follow the hellish new scripture of wokeism. Take my word for it, God ain't woke. Ironically, the Church of England has spent the last 4 years on a massive book project called Living in Love and Faith. How's that working out for you? Well, in the end, Calvin took his business elsewhere and is now serving with the Global Anglicans Future Conference, who don't cancel those who wish to serve God and share God's message. I'm pretty sure that Calvin's sermons will make for far better listening than those from the pious and increasingly political Justin Welby. Forgive me if I hide under my cassock next time he opens his mouth. Well, what do you think about that? What's your view? Mark at gbnews.uk, reacting to that and all of the big stories of the day. Actress and TV royalty, reality star Daniela Westbrook, journalist, political commentator and author Ella Whelan, and Olympic hero, broadcaster and motivational speaker Chris Akabusi. Ella, welcome back to the show. Great to see you again. What is your reaction to the latest pronouncements from the Archbishop of Canterbury on climate change?
Well, as a failed Catholic, I'd never listen to what Justin Welby said anyway. But that aside, I think it tells you something about, in fact, the sort of environmentalist movement or the kind of the green campaign today, which is that more often than not, they do sound like a kind of, not quite a religious cult, but certainly a group of people who believe that any kind of criticism or debate about how to deal with the future green policies as sacrilegious, as you're blaspheming if you say anything critical of things like low traffic neighbourhoods or green levies or things like that. And so it's probably quite in keeping that the head of the Church of England is echoing that kind of sentiment and saying that it's sort of ungodly or immoral to have a different opinion in relation to how we're going to plan for the future. I think anybody who's surprised at this coming out of Welby's mouth has not been paying attention, because more often than not, rather than actually sticking to, as you said in your introduction, talking about this particular, religion and spiritual beliefs, he's more often than not trying to elbow his way into politics. I mean, it was ever thus with the Church of England. You have to remember that the Church and state have always been intertwined, and they have always had some political sway and some political power. Probably part of the problem today is that the political sway they have seems so naff a lot of the time, because it's just playing into a kind of right-on script.
Well, that's right. And I think that the Archbishop has to be careful, Ella, because if he criticises the Rwanda policy, which I've acknowledged in my Big Opinion monologue is far from perfect, and let's be honest, no one's gone there so far, but this is an attempt to tackle an evil criminal business model. The Mail on Sunday revealed last weekend that 40% of recent crossings have been populated by migrants from Albania, which is not war-torn. So just as he criticises a government policy to tackle this awful crime, he's got egg on his face.
Yeah, I don't think we should fall into the Welby trap, actually, in relation to Rwanda, because if you start talking about the Rwanda policy, if you start talking about things like an immigration policy in terms of, which has happened in terms of sort of solely a moral issue, that either you're for or against it because you're either for or against these people trafficking gangs, then that isn't explaining the whole picture. I mean, the reason why someone like me might be opposed to the Rwanda policy is because, like I was in relation to very, very similar EU immigration policies, I think it's a dodgy political strategy to try and trade with trade and migrants and play off your immigration policy in that kind of way. But to sort of to either say anything relating to Rwanda policy is in a kind of immoral, terrible thing that any kind of decent citizen would like to support is bad. It's also equally bad to say, well, not equally, but I think you get into dodgy territory and you in danger of getting egg on your face if you say, well, the only if you don't oppose, if you don't support this, and if you don't say something about it, even if it is imperfect, I actually think it's not imperfect, it's totally crap, then you like people trafficking gangs. Politics is always more complicated, and I think that's what's the most frustrating thing about this Welby, this Justin Welby sticking his nose in, which is that it turns it into the kind of very simple language that religion deals in, which is good and evil, and we know that politics is far more complicated than that.
For sure. Chris Akabusi, take my word for it, God ain't woke, and I can't imagine he's delighted about this highly political intervention from the Archbishop.
Look, the Archbishop has got a role to discuss issues that affect mankind from a theological perspective. I know that they're supposed to be there for their members and for their flock and for the administration, etc., etc. But it would be quite strange if an Archbishop didn't have an opinion, for example, on something like the Rwanda policy, not directly the policy, but the idea that you can transport people to Africa and drop them in Africa and not really know what's going to happen to them after they are there. I can understand that. He's going to have issues to do with our social world. He's going to be able to talk about issues that the environment, spiritual issues. Why wouldn't the Archbishop have a point of view? As of course, he's got to be careful how he articulates that. He shouldn't be seen to be on the right or the left of our political structures. But I can understand why the Archbishop would have a thought and a discussion about the impact of those who've got the lever and mechanism of control on mankind, or when I say mankind, humankind. Obviously, I'm talking about men and women here.
Although, Chris, he's complaining about the West and the Industrial Revolution, well, who paid for all those wonderful churches he preaches in?
Yeah, I mean, again, he's talking about climate change. I mean, I'm not so on board with the climate change agenda, but he's got a very causal link between the Industrial Revolution, which we've all profited from. I've got a lovely car, I've got a lovely home, got central heating, etc., and the world that we live in, the Industrial Revolution. And I think, he's sort of suggesting that that causal link with the Industrial Revolution and the experiencing we have in our climate. Again, I'm not necessarily on board with that thought process, but I can understand if he's thought, but he puts it out there. I mean, it would be weird, I think, if the church and its ministers didn't have a perspective. It doesn't have to be right, it doesn't have to be wrong, just a perspective. And you can challenge on it like you are doing. But I was more in line with you when you said that he didn't seem to have a perspective on lockdowns and some of the experiences we've had over the last 2 years, because that to me was illiberal, was taking advantage of us, the small people. I don't know how, for example, the churches were not open. I mean, I think the Nazarene, for example, who I believe that the Archbishop follows, I mean, he would have been there looking after the people and welcoming the people into his church, and it would have been a sanctuary and a place to go when you've got your isolation and alienation and all those other sort of issues that people have been dealing with their mental health. So I would have liked to have heard the Archbishop talk a lot more during the last 2.5 years about that and be a foil to what was going on.
Yes, I've got no doubt he'll be preaching about the poverty and inequality in this country. Well, lockdowns are a big part of that. We have smashed our economy against a brick wall, and I don't hear or remember hearing a squeak of criticism about him on those policies, even though he's got opinions on everything else. Daniela Westbrook, do you think that the Archbishop should be so political?
I just think, you know, he's the acting Archbishop right now, so it falls to him, doesn't it? So he's like the head of that section to talk about. And I think sometimes we're missing the bigger picture a little bit. Not that I'm saying he's right or wrong, I'm sitting on the fence here a little bit today, make a change. But I do kind of think that he's been told, these are the topics, this is what we're talking about, and it sort of directs everybody to look at that rather than what the deeper meaning of what's going on and what we're getting away with and everything else. But, you know, and I do think sometimes when he says we've all got a part to play with the green issue, maybe he means a bit more about how we live, you know, the ways we live and everything else, not just about, you know, how it's made out to sound as such.
For sure. Well, what's your view? Mark at gbnews.uk. Is the Archbishop getting too political, or does he have a right to reply, as Chris Akabusi has said? Look, lots to get through in the show. Jessica Alves is my Mark Meets guest as she transitioned from being a British Brazilian male into a woman. She was known as the human Ken doll, Ken and Barbie, of course. What a story. She tells hers live at 10. In my take at 10, by the way, the BBC have employed a disinformation officer. How ironic. I'll be dealing with that at the turn of the hour. And in the news agenda with my panel, is the era of convenient, low-cost travel over? But in the big question next, are second homes morally wrong? We'll discuss that. And after the break, an exciting announcement about a brand new show. See you in 2.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, a very big reaction to my big opinion monologue. I think that the Church of England have gone woke, and I think that the Archbishop Justin Welby has become a very divisive figure and has essentially become too politicised. But what do you think, Mark at gbnews.uk? How about this from Caroline? Mark, Justin Welby has spoken of his own depression. It seems that he's determined to make everyone else depressed. He's a doom monger. His flock are falling off a cliff into oblivion. The rest of us will just get on with life. Carl writes, good evening, GB News. Good evening, Mark. What an excellent start to the show this evening. You've been bashing the bishop. Keep up the good work. Carl, can't imagine what you mean, but thank you. Also, David emailed a spot-on monologue. Mark Welby should concentrate on his job, spiritual guidance, and leave the green Marxist woke politics to the deranged politicians. Great show, Mark. Best wishes, Dave. Well, Dave, thank you so much for that. And last but not least, Rachel, dear Mark, you're absolutely right in your monologue. I wrote to the Archbishop along these exact lines. And Rachel has sent me a copy of that letter, which I shall read after the show. Speaking of shows, I've got an exciting announcement to make. So, it's just over a year since I joined GB News. Best thing I've ever done, best job I've ever had. You're the best audience. We're growing. I'm normally beating Sky News about now, thanks to you. But we're on the up. So I've got 2 weeks off at the end of August. I return for the first weekend of September. Of course, Sunday night will be the eve of the announcement of our new Prime Minister. And we're doing something very special every Saturday night. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Mark Dolan Tonight, as always, 9 till 11. But on Saturday night, from 8 until 9, a brand new show called Dial Dolan, which is all about you. We are the People's Channel, and so we're going to give you a voice, a whole hour of airtime. That's right, I'll be taking your video calls on the big stories of the day in Dial Dolan every Saturday night from 8 till 9 p.m. Now, if you'd like to be part of this TV revolution, then drop me a personal email right now, mark@gbnews.uk, and me and my team will put together all of the interested people who want to take part, and we'll get you on the show. That's right, Dial Dolan starts on Saturday, the first Saturday in September. So there you go, do join the party. And by the way, if you're enjoying the show, and if you're enjoying the channel, tell your friends, tell your family, and let's change the world together. It's time now for this. Dial Dolan. It's going to be unmissable telly. mark@gbnews.uk. I want to make you a star. It's time now for the big question in which we tackle a major news story of the day. And tonight, with an explosion in holiday lets in some of the most beautiful parts of the country, and with successful city types purchasing a rural bolt hole for the weekends, millions of young Brits are now unable to get on the housing ladder in areas in which they grew up. So are second homes a just reward for hard work and making something of your life? Or are they an example of greed and inequality that add to the country's housing crisis? That's tonight's big question. Are second homes morally wrong? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome founder of, and I should get a pronunciation for this, but I believe it's Beauchamp Estates, a worldwide estate agent. That's Harry Hersham, and it's Beauchamp, probably misspelled. Entrepreneur and former investor on Dragon's Den, Piers Linney. And hopefully we'll be joined shortly by Kath Nevin, co-founder of protest group First Not Second Homes. Gary, let me start with you, if I can. Do you think that second homes are morally wrong?
Absolutely not.
Now, do you care to elaborate on that? Because there are so many people, aren't there, Gary, who grow up in beautiful parts of Wales, Cornwall, the West Country, the Highlands and Islands, who would love once they get married and settle down to get a deposit together and buy a flat or a house, but they can't because somebody's just bought something at an inflated price to put on Airbnb.
I'm not so sure why you're relating second homes to inflated prices and Airbnb. Surely everybody's at liberty to do whatever they like with their money. And if buying a second small country house is something they want to do, why should that, with an open market property, prevent somebody else from buying it? If it's an open market, if you're suggesting in the first instance that the price has been inflated because foreigners or very wealthy people are buying expensive homes, then perhaps I could understand what you're saying. But that isn't the case because the market is the market. And whether people are stopped from buying second homes or foreigners are stopped from buying second homes, that won't decrease. That won't make the prices go down, make values go down. So I don't quite see the logic in what you're saying.
Well, if people own a house and then they buy a second house for holidays or weekend trips, well, then they're reducing the available housing stock, Gary.
They certainly are, but it's not a market that is limited or specific to a particular type or individual. Anybody can buy that house. If you're trying to tell me that because people are allowed to buy second homes, prices have gone up, well, I will argue that that's wrong. That isn't the case. Prices are made by the market rather than made by the estate agents or the government or anything else.
Let's speak to Piers Linney, star of Dragon's Den, of course, on this. Do you think, Piers, that second homes are morally wrong?
I think morally wrong is a bit strong. I think this is a very complicated subject. It's not black or white. So I think the market, you can talk about the market's the market, but the market, is a function of supply and demand. So if there's less supply because people are buying more than one property, then, the price will go up. It's simple mathematics, simple economics. But the point is that you're always going to start, I think, as I was just saying there, that there is a market, there's a price. And if you want to change that or change behaviours, you have to come up with some kind of way of incentivising those behaviour changes. And that might be tax. It might be like in Wales where they're hiking their council tax by 300%. But the point is, if you're quite wealthy, you want a country bolt hole, and they've increased council tax by 300%, that's probably not going to deter you. So, you don't want these sort of hollow ghost towns out in the country. But the big issue I would come to really is that you've got to be very careful as local authorities about unintended consequences. Demographics are changing. Post-COVID, we don't know where people are going to live. Are people going to be spending more time in the country having city bolt holes? We have empty cities. That hasn't quite settled yet. We don't really know. Technology's changing, the need for human labour outside of cities. As we all know, cities are a function of bringing together the units of production, and that's kind of breaking down. So got to be very careful about, what people wish for in terms of trying to change that market, because you may find that 10 years down the line that these local economies fall to pieces.
Well, I think that's the point, isn't it, Gary? And the issue is that, of course, rich people will never be dissuaded from buying a second home, as suggested there by Piers. They'll just pay more. But what about the use of property as a commodity with which to make money? What about the people that are buying small houses in rural Wales just to put on the market as Airbnb properties? I mean, that's profiteering from a precious public resource, which is housing.
I don't think that's profiteering at all. I think if somebody has a cash reserve or has money in the bank today, he's going to get barely 1% or 1.25% interest on his money. What is he trying to do? He's trying to increase the value of his cash today. Cash is appreciating. So therefore, why would it be wrong for somebody to buy a home in the country? His circumstances perhaps change, decides he's got to go and move somewhere else, or live abroad, or live back in a city. Why shouldn't he take advantage of the asset it has? Why shouldn't it be income producing? Why are you saying, or why are you suggesting it shouldn't be income producing? You're going 2 stages further than when you're talking about selling it.
If you take a rural property, surely it's far better used as a home for a family 365 days a year, not just for the Easter and summer holidays.
Maybe that's so, but you can't make a law about that. You can't force people to stay in their houses. What about going on holiday for a month or 2 months during the course of the year? Are they no longer allowed to do that? Do they have to be there 365 days a year? I don't think that's ethically right either.
Let's bring my panel in, if I can, Gary and Piers. We're joined by actress Daniela Westbrook, political commentator Ella Whelan, and Olympian Chris Akabusi. Ella, what do you think about this? Do you think second homes are morally wrong? Because we do know that certain towns and villages have been decimated by the Airbnb market and weekenders.
I think the arguments, the arguments put forward for why it's a problem at the current moment are very strong. And I know that lots of people who live in, you're in a double bind, and if you live in these tourist towns, particularly in the southwest, like in Cornwall and parts of Devon, you're reliant on tourism. You're reliant on the people who come in the air and stay in the Airbnbs to buy the ice creams and do the surfing and all the rest of it. But then, of course, when the summer season's over, those towns can be pretty bad places to live. There's not many jobs, there's not much housing. But the solution for me is not to moralise around it, but to say that the problem is in a lack of resources, a lack of housing. And so the solution to this problem, particularly in relation to young people not being able to get on the housing ladder or even actually to rent anywhere, is to build more houses. And I think, if we sort of fight over this tiny little housing stock that we have that's not even remotely sufficient to meet the needs of the nation, then we're not getting anywhere. Instead, we should be putting pressure on politicians, particularly the current Conservative government, who have promised 300,000 or something like that homes and can't even nearly meet that amount. To get on with the business of putting bricks and cement into the ground and raising resources.
Well, I agree with you, Ella. Build, baby, build. Absolutely. But we are where we are right now. And do you not think that tougher measures should be placed upon those seeking a second home, such as more council tax or some kind of, second home levy? Don't you think that we've got to do something to support quite often working class people who grew up in rural areas who now can't live there?
I think whether you do it that way or whether you say that there are incentives or help for people born in a local community who are growing up in a local community, people who've left school and are now starting their first job and are looking to move out of their parents' house and can't get anywhere near any kind of place to rent for any kind of decent amount of money, then there should be some kind of help in relation to that, or they should jump to the front of the queue. But that can only be we have to remember that can only be a sticking plaster. That's only a temporary measure. And actually, I think more effort should be into the long-term, the build, baby, build long-term project.
Daniela Westbrook, you're a TV star. You were in EastEnders for over a decade. You must have a load of houses.
I don't have any houses there anymore. My ex-husband's got them all. But the way I see it is this, why are we discriminating against all parts of certain parts of the country? Why has it got to be just the rural areas? London's a big tourist attraction. People come from all over the world, but it's OK if they're spending money in London, but not anywhere else. I'm from East London. The whole of East London's been changed. And you drive through the city at the weekend and most apartments and flats, the lights are out because people only work and live there during the week, go home at the weekends. My children couldn't afford to get on the property ladder the way it is now. But when I was in my early 20s, the government was selling off all the council houses to people like me, and to make us buy, to put more money back in the government. Once again, they're changing it again to say, look, it's your fault because you earn too much money. It's your fault. It's not. The government need to build houses. They need to help people. They need to help other people out and stop blaming everybody else for the mistakes they made years ago and everything else. They're not giving people any options. And other people do pay renters' tax if they rent their houses out and stuff. Maybe not holiday vacation homes, but they do. And it's not just certain little areas of the country. It's all over the country. But, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So what, are we not supposed to buy property and invest our money in something, leave it in the bank and let it go down?
Well, you do wonder, these resources are scarce, aren't they, Chris Akabusi? Is there not a difference between those who purchase a property for rent as a second pension or even their only pension versus holiday homes or buying a property just to put on Airbnb?
Clearly there is a difference between those who have their holiday homes and those who buy properties to go on Airbnb. But one of your contributors also mentioned there about it's much more nuanced than that. When I was a sportsman, I had a second home in California. Why? Because I lived in California 6 months of the year. And so I bought the property there. And I was in that for 6 years. And then, like Daniela, I passed that to my wife when we got divorced. But then also while I was working in TV in the 90s, I had a second home in London. Why? Because I was in London 3 days a week filming. And I would rather live in the countryside, but I came into London. So I think we've got to be careful because there's many scenarios many potential scenarios behind somebody having a second home. So it's already been discussed, some of the options that you've got of looking after people in rural communities. I love what Ella said there about, if you're born and bred in an area and you've got, put a number, 10 years there, you jump to the front of the queue. But I agree with your contributors. There's nothing per se wrong with a second home. You contribute to the community. You've got plumbers and service personnel who've got to keep, gardeners who want to keep your property up to scratch. When you're there, you spend in the restaurants and the shops. So I want to be greedy and say we can do both.
Can I just say quickly as well, a lot of people that do have second homes, they aren't just holiday homes. A lot of people buy second properties in areas that they come from and maybe have moved away from, and they rent them out, which gives people like my son an opportunity to move out of home and live somewhere else because he can't afford to buy. So not everything's left empty 9 months of the year.
Piers, Linny, you've set up and run so many successful businesses. You're a former investor on Dragon's Den. How would you troubleshoot this situation? How would you resolve that tension between the aspiration of people who have made something of their lives by buying a second home and the needs of locals?
Well, like I said earlier, the only way you can really do it is through some form of regulation or taxation. But if you're very wealthy, that's not really going to impact you. You're going to make a decision. You're going to pay whatever you've got to pay the local authority. The issue I think is right is that we just said before is that the amount of new housing stock needs to increase. It's again supply and demand, then the cost of it. Social housing, that's stalled as well. So that needs to be fixed. But the issue is it's not just about the law of unintended consequences. You've got to be very careful how you lock down these economies. It's also how you police it. So, for example, if you live in a rural area, you manage to buy a house, and you want to go and spend a couple of months working away, or you go on holiday, can you put that onto Airbnb and earn some extra income? Maybe you decide that actually you're better off moving out, getting a job somewhere else, and using your income from your property to fund your rent or your mortgage somewhere else. They then force you to sell that property. The regulation of this, if you think about the detail, is extremely complicated.
Indeed, of course it is, and I can't see us resolving this issue anytime soon. Gary, you'll be pleased to hear that I'm on your rather splendid, salubrious website, which is Beecham.com, B-E-A-U-C-H-A-M-P, Beecham Estates, with luxury properties all over the world. And it's not the UK exclusively that has this tension. Great cities like Barcelona and Paris have the same issue, don't they?
They do indeed, absolutely right. But I don't think you're talking about the same type of people who can't afford to buy versus the ones who can afford to buy. The wealthy who are buying properties or second or third homes are not competing with those who can only spend considerably less money than the wealthy. I'm not quite sure you're competing unless you're saying that the top of the scale forces the bottom of the scale up. And therefore, if we prevent the purchase of second homes, prices will go down, become more affordable. Well, I'm not so sure that's right either, but if it is, it'll take a hell of a long time to adjust itself. I think the idea of the Airbnb or indeed a rental of a property actually solves the solution, rather than what you're saying, which it doesn't solve the solution. I think that if somebody buys a property and puts it on the rental market, it does open up the doors to more properties being available, even if they're only for rent.
Well, of course, that was a point made by Daniela Westbrook. Although, Gary, what would you say to somebody born in rural Wales who's now 25 years of age, has got a decent job, just got married, a kid on the way, who cannot afford to live in the town or village in which he grew up? And that's the case for thousands of people in this country.
I think that's the case for thousands of people in every single city in this country, not necessarily only rural Wales or Scotland or Essex or anywhere else. I think there is a housing problem, and that housing problem will not be resolved simply by taking the ability to buy a second home away from a person who wants to buy a second home. I think, as everybody said, we need to increase the housing stock.
Now, listen, we all agree on that, Gary, and I know you're brilliant at what you do and you've got many happy customers, but don't you think there is something morally wrong about the idea of these wonderful properties lying empty for months on end?
This is not something that's new. This has been going on since the early 80s. As far as I can remember, I've been in an estate agency for 52 years now. 42 years, maybe. 42 years now. This has been, I remember selling a house for, doesn't sound like a lot of money, but was a hell of a lot of money in those days, £1.5 million in the early 80s, and it was kept empty for years and years and years. I don't know how you prevent that. I don't know what legislation could be enacted to prevent people buying homes and not living them in 365 days a year. What happens if you live in something for 320 days a year? Are you penalised for that, or is the cut-off 180 or 220, whatever it might be? I just don't see any mechanics that would allow a government to stop people living in a home, stop people renting homes out or not living in them.
Piers Linney, final.
I don't see. Sorry.
You don't see. Well, no, I take your point. It does seem to be an insuperable issue, and I'm certainly not instinctively keen on taxes or regulation. Piers Linney, final closing thoughts.
I think we've discussed that this is a very complicated topic, and I think at the end of the day, people who can afford it, I think you're absolutely right. The point there is that the social housing market is not the same market as the second home market. It's apples and oranges, and the people with the money are, if they're going to buy this property, they're going to buy this property. If you want to restrict that or change tax or charge them more, you've got to think about what are the unintended consequences that are going to impact that community down the line. But my main point, I would say, is that, and we just said it there as well, is that managing this and policing this is an impossibility in terms of what are the cut-offs, what if someone decides to move out to their local area, what if they want to come back, just how do you police this? That would probably cost more than anything you can raise from increasing council tax.
Gary, before we go, I'm on the website. I've just spotted a property, a family house, 4 bedrooms in a gated residential park in France, 15 minutes from Mandelieu, which is on the French Riviera. 1.1 million euros. Any chance of mates rates? You do me a special price?
100%. Just phone me up directly.
I'll DM you later. Brilliant conversation. Thank you for all of your collective input. Gary Hersham is an entrepreneur and the founder of Beecham Estates, a worldwide estate agency, and also former Dragon from Dragon's Den, entrepreneur, investor and businessman Piers Linney. Thanks to my panel as well. What do you think? Are second homes morally wrong? Let me know your thoughts. Mark at gbnews.uk. Next up, is the era of convenient low-cost travel over? See you in 2.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Lots more to get through on Mark Dolan tonight, including the papers at 10:30. And Jessica Alves is someone that was born a British-Brazilian male, was known as the human Ken doll, 100 procedures, £500,000 spent, and now she's a lady and she tells her story in the studio at 10 o'clock. In My Take at 10, the BBC have employed a disinformation officer. Welcome to hell. I'll be dealing with the BBC at 10 as well. But let's get back to your emails. Are second homes morally wrong? Elizabeth says, Mark, what is morally wrong? You haven't mentioned it, and this is morally wrong to bring in 1 million extra people a year without having anywhere to put them. Water crisis, housing crisis, dental crisis, NHS crisis, schools, food, energy. There's only one crisis, a population crisis. Simon says, Mark, this issue with housing is all about gentrification. If there are no locals left, who's going to work in the shops or restaurants where the rich spend their money? As for locals who can't afford them, they could if you needed a residence permit based on how long you've lived there. Prices would be affordable. So lots of you are suggesting, actually, that there could be measures to encourage local home ownership from people that have grown up in a certain area. I'll get to more of your emails shortly, but let's have a look at this, a quick viral video. We love this. We've all faced this problem on holidays, racing for sunbeds. Well, these were holidaymakers at a hotel in Tenerife, having to be on full alert to have a chance of getting a decent spot by the pool. Doesn't look like the relaxing holiday they were hoping for actually happened. Look at this. It's a frenzy. How many of them are German? I'm allowed to make that joke. Mrs. Dolan is German, as she's keen to remind me on a regular basis. Now, let's stay on travel. It could get worse for all travellers. One of the pioneers of low-price travel says the era of super cheap flights could be coming to an end. Ryanair's CEO, Michael O'Leary, suggested they'll have to charge more to cover the soaring cost of fuel. They were offering promotional tickets for under €10, but except now he predicts the average price will rise to around £50. Despite the increases and cost of living problem, he's confident travellers will still pay the extra to get away. But is the era of convenient, low-cost travel over? Daniela, what do you think? We know about the queues at the airport. We know about the cost of flights. We know about cancelled flights. Will it ever go back to the way it was pre-pandemic?
I don't think it will. I really don't think it will. And as for like £10 flights or £50 flights, it never is a £10 or £50 flight, is it? Because then you have to pay to book your seat where you want to sit if you want to sit next to your family. Then you've got to pay for what else? For luggage. Then you can only take one piece of hand luggage so big, and then if you want it slightly bigger, you've got to pay for that. Then it's the weight system and everything else. And there's just another thing and another thing. A speedy booking, that's another thing you can pay for. Speedy boarding, pay for that. A £50 ticket soon becomes a £200 ticket. There is no such thing as a cheap ticket.
No, that's right. I mean, it does look like the halcyon days, doesn't it? When I got married, I actually got married in Austria. My mother-in-law's Austrian. And I felt a bit bad because, like, you have your wedding abroad. It's not great for friends and family in the UK, is it? But before we decided to go to Austria for the wedding, we looked online and we were looking at return flights to Austria for £50. And at that point, that's probably as cheap as a train trip up to York. So we went for it. But, I mean, you know, this is not the current era. I'm not sure we'll ever go back there.
Well, I think it's important to note that O'Leary is explaining this specifically in terms of jet fuel costs and not doing the narrative that has become sort of central to many politicians' green agenda, which is prices should go up in flights to deter people from going abroad. He's been quite clear that that's not something he's interested in. Because I do think that cheap travel is important on a cultural level and a kind of mind-expanding level, which is that it's a weird kind of paradox of politics, which is that you have particularly kind of, you know, sort of, if to go down that route. The kind of remain a middle-class view of what's good and what's proper, which is go on Erasmus, go explore the world, you horrible little Englander, you know nothing but your backyard. But actually, we're going to make, we think that flights should be so expensive that the poor little Englanders won't be able to go and do that. And there is something about getting away from your country, whether it's for a holiday or whatever, seeing different people, talking different languages, eating different food, and seeing the world that is, I think, everybody should experience. And, whether it's, Ryanair used to run 99 cents flights. OK, I think probably all of us can fork out a little bit more than that. But if we're getting into the realm in which foreign travel is simply for people who are in the upper echelons of society, then I think that's a real problem.
Well, that's right, because I always think that IKEA democratised interior design and home furnishings by making beautiful furniture available and cost-effective for everyone. And I think Ryanair have done that, as have EasyJet, when it comes to international travel. And long may it continue. I mean, it's been very good for this country culturally that we've been going to the south of France and Spain for about the last 50 years.
Yeah, and the very fact of that it's become people get very snobby about it. There's that, people, the argument is always, well, why do you need to go to Tenerife? Or why do you need to go to Marbella or something like that? And just the miserabilism of it. It's like, well, they're all often, particularly in relation to lockdowns and things like that, the sneering happens, it gets aimed towards the people who do the work of society that makes society run. People who are slogging their lives away of building or plumbing or being a cashier in a supermarket, who then dare to want to go and get a bit of sun in Turkey or something like that. And that's not allowed. But my very important speaking job in Chicago, which is like millions of air miles or whatever it is, that should stay. And it does come down to a class distinction where there's a real level of snobbery around this.
Yeah, what do you think? Is there a subtle agenda, Chris Akabusi, to make air travel more expensive and less convenient? A bit like what we're seeing on the roads, where it's costing you more to drive your car, and the elite are quite happy about that.
So, I would certainly think that there is that sort of tendency, the green agenda really, to stop or to reduce the amount of air travel for the normal person, which I include myself, obviously. Yeah. But going back, I didn't travel abroad until 1975, and I was already sort of 18 by then. Yeah. So, is it a right or is it a privilege? It's something we've all got used to, I understand. But we were none the worse off by not. So, for example, I had to go to Lutuke. Lutuke was my very first holiday abroad, and it's a ferry trip. Now, our youngsters fly for a booze cruise for a weekend. I think in the end, what will equalise it is the cost of holidays here in the UK, because to stay on holiday here, it costs so much money in the UK that actually, rather than the £50, if I've got to spend £150, but I'm guaranteed a little bit more sunshine, I might actually spend the money anyway.
There you go. Well, look, we'll get to more of your thoughts on that very shortly in the next hour in my Take at 10 in just 5 minutes' time. The BBC have employed a disinformation officer. I'll be dealing with them very shortly. Plus, Jessica Alves, who's been on quite a journey. 100 plastic surgery procedures, going from being the human Ken doll to a woman. She tells her story live in the studio at 10, plus for papers at 10:30. More from my panel and lots more. See you shortly.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's just turned 10 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10 in 3 minutes' time, why the BBC has hired a disinformation officer. Even though whether it's COVID or Brexit, this taxpayer-funded organisation has indulged in plenty of disinformation itself over the years. My Mark Meets guest has been on quite the journey. Jessica Alves is a British-Brazilian TV personality known previously as the human Ken doll. She was born Rodrigo Alves and has had over 100 plastic surgery treatments and spent over £500,000 to change her appearance and her gender. She's unrecognisable as the person she once was. So why did she do it and why is she planning to go back under the surgeon's knife? She tells her amazing story in the studio shortly. In the news agenda with my panel, following the appalling attack on Salman Rushdie and with a death threat in the direction of J.K. Rowling, should more be done to protect authors and artists from attack? And are disposable barbecues a menace? We'll discuss that later, plus another topical game show and tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30. And the queen of US showbiz and royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield, live from Hollywood, California. After this, I'll be dealing with the BBC, but first the headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Mark, thank you. I am Bethany Elsey, here to bring you up to date from the GB newsroom. The man accused of stabbing author Sir Salman Rushdie has pleaded not guilty on charges of attempted murder and assault. 24-year-old Hadi Mattar appeared at court earlier after allegedly attacking Sir Salman on stage in New York State yesterday. The 75-year-old remains in hospital on a ventilator. His agent says he may lose an eye and that he sustained nerve and liver damage. He's faced several death threats over his writing, most notably from Islamists in 1989 over the satanic verses. Imam Ibrahim Mogra says Muslims he's spoken to condemn the attack.
No one wanted to see that happen. That's not what Islam condones. We are not allowed to take the law into our own hands. Vigilantism is not permitted. And I don't know of anyone who is rejoicing from news of what has happened.
Rail industry bosses and the union group ASLEF are expected to hold formal talks next week over strike action that left most of the UK network crippled. Drivers at 9 train companies walked out today in a dispute over jobs, pay and conditions. Picket lines were set up in several areas, including Ashford, London, Hull, Manchester and Liverpool. ASLEF claims their drivers haven't had a pay increase for 3 years. There are warnings drought conditions in parts of England could last until next year. England is experiencing its driest summer for half a century, and the Environment Agency says it would take weeks' worth of rain to replenish water sources. More extreme heat is expected in the south of the country this weekend, while the north is set to be hit by thunderstorms and floods. Amber weather warnings have been issued. And an 82-year-old man has climbed the final mountain in his challenge to bag all of Scotland's 282 Munros. Nick Gardner was greeted with a piper and a guard of honour from fellow climbers who cheered him on as he reached the summit of Cairngorm earlier today. The grandfather of four has spent the last 2 years climbing the highest peaks and raising money for charities Alzheimer's Scotland and the Royal Osteoporosis Society.
What I wanted to do was increase awareness, and I've done it. So that's been successful. Yeah, the fact that the challenge has been successful is immaterial. The fact that I've made the public more aware of these diseases, that's the real success to me.
On TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now let's get back to Mark.
Many thanks to Bethany, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Big stories, big guests, and always big opinions. In the news agenda with my panel, is the era of convenient low-cost travel over? We'll develop that story. Plus, should more be done to protect authors and artists from attack? Are disposable barbecues a menace? Plus, another topical game show and tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30 sharp with full panel reaction. And my Mark Meets guest live in the studio, just getting herself ready, is Jessica Alves, a Brazilian-British TV personality previously known as the human Ken doll, born Rodrigo Alves. Someone who's had over 100 plastic surgery treatments and spent over £500,000 to change her appearance and her gender. I'll be asking her why after this. Welcome to hell. The BBC have recruited someone that call themselves a disinformation and social media correspondent. Here's the tweet. Delighted I've been promoted from reporter and I'm now the BBC's first disinformation and social media correspondent. I'll keep investigating real-world consequences of online disinformation, trolling and all that's bad on social media with new podcasts, TV and more coming soon. Notwithstanding the hellish Orwellian flavour of the job title, after a relentless campaign against Brexit, after 2.5 years of one-note pro-lockdown coverage of the pandemic, and after a recent so-called documentary about the virus which featured medics with vested interests, what the hell is disinformation when it's at home? As we saw in the course of the pandemic, all too often, disinformation was simply a label given to anything that challenged the narrative about COVID-19, that asked questions about mask efficacy, lockdown impacts, or vaccine side effects. Anyone who actually dared to look at the data was accused of peddling disinformation when all they were doing in many cases was quoting official government statistics. Now, I've had the jab for what it's worth, but it was apparently disinformation to question vaccine side effects, of which there are sadly plenty. You'll still get cancelled from Twitter for asking why kids who face almost zero threat from the virus should take the jab. Look at the Danish government, who have now banned vaccination for the under-18s. Are the Danish government guilty of disinformation too? Are they anti-vaxxers? Could the BBC possibly cancel an entire country? I'm sure they'd love to try. It was disinformation to call out the economic risk of lockdowns, which turned out to be information, not disinformation. Often all you need for disinformation to become truth is a few months and some honest journalism. That COVID leaked from a lab was a wild conspiracy a year ago. Disinformation, if you like, now a serious line of inquiry. Funny that. Suggesting cheap, low-risk treatments for COVID symptoms, including, wait for it, vitamin D, would have got you sent to the funny farm. Let me help this new BBC employee. This is what disinformation looks like.
You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Amazing. Perhaps this new recruit to the Beeb could censor Joe Biden for that outright lie. He also said just 2 weeks ago that America was not in recession, even though they've had 2 quarters of negative growth, a metric used to define recessions in the Western world for over 50 years. Disinformation, ladies and gentlemen, at the very top. So I suggest the BBC start with the White House and work backwards. So do you see the problem with this new job title? Who decides what is fact and what is fiction when for over 2 years governments, the bureaucracy and indeed the media have been among the worst culprits of disinformation. After all, they characterised the pandemic as the bubonic plague, which it was not. The colossal overreaction to this potentially lethal but largely mild virus has caused far more damage than COVID ever could. And Project Fear in the years running up to Brexit was probably the most sustained campaign of disinformation we've ever seen. How much disinformation is the establishment media spewing out about climate change? I don't know, my mind is open, but you tell me. I've got no doubt that this individual at the Beeb has a huge future in the media and great talents. And reporting the appalling scourge of online trolling, bullying and outright lies is massively important. In that, I wish her well. But my problem is with the job title Disinformation Correspondent, a potential propaganda tool that you and I are actually paying for through the licence fee. How dare this publicly funded body decide what is truth and what is fiction? Often it's only history that delivers the real truth, and I believe that history will be excoriating about our pandemic response. Yes, there are many nutters out there and disinformation can be dangerous, but it always was. Trust a free press and a public with a brain and common sense to spot it, not a government-sponsored censor. We're not stupid, you know, even though the Beeb clearly think we are. So there you go, that's my view. Let me know your thoughts, mark@gbnews.uk. It's time for this. It's time for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, showbiz, sport, business and beyond. Tonight, Jessica Alves, a British Brazilian television personality, formerly known as the Human Ken doll, who spent over £500,000 undergoing over 100 cosmetic procedures to change not just her appearance, but her gender. Born Rodrigo Alves in São Paulo in Brazil to a Brazilian mother and a British father, he, and latterly she, has rarely been out of the headlines. With a passion for high-end fashions, she's become a fixture of the red carpet and made quite the splash when she appeared on Celebrity Big Brother in 2018. One of the most colourful and entertaining characters in the showbiz scene, this lady doesn't do boring, a bit like this show. It's my great pleasure to welcome Jessica Alves to GB News. Hi, Jess.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Great to see you.
I don't do boring at all.
You don't do boring?
I can't do boring.
How old were you when you realised you wanted to change and look different?
At the age of 17, 18, I knew that plastic surgery existed, and but I was far too young to go and have a nose job or a facelift. So when I moved to the UK at the age of 19, it is when I started having procedures like nose job and lab instructions and change my appearance.
And the first part of your journey was to become the real life Ken doll, to get the partner to Barbie.
You see, that's interesting because it was never my aim to look and be a Ken doll lookalike. But because I had so many plastic surgeries, I end up looking very androgynous. And actually, I looked like the doll. Now, my appearance, the way that I wear those colorful jackets. So then a nickname came. And then that became a job. It became a worldwide sensation, like with more than 600 television shows in 24 countries. I speak 7 languages fluently. So I was pretty much everywhere. I was in Russia, America, Italy, doing all sorts of television shows, and people calling me that's the Human Life Ken doll. But it was never my aim.
So that was not the plan? It was
never my aim. It was not the plan. But because I had so many surgeries, I end up looking like the doll. Now people call me Barbie doll. Jessica Alves, the Barbie doll. And I'm not having any plastic surgeries or aesthetic procedures to look like Barbie. In fact, I'm too old for that. I'm 39 years old. And I'm not also having surgeries to look younger because plastic surgeries don't make you look younger. No. But yeah, I'm not a doll wannabe. I just want to be happy.
Were you comfortable with the Ken doll description at the time?
Interesting, no, because no, I was never comfortable with it. I never liked when I was described as the Ken doll.
Yeah, and all you did, you accepted it because it became your brand.
Yeah, I accepted it. I was just having fun with it. So my agents would say at the time, Jessica, just have fun with it, really, just enjoy it, because you're having the world down on your feet now, and you're traveling, you're doing this, people actually, they love you, so just enjoy it. And that's what I did. And then I forgot to actually enjoy life and be happy. My personal life was neglected. So year after year, just having surgeries, wanting to transition, but didn't know how to. So I have always wanted to transition, but I just didn't know how to. I didn't have any alike friends. I didn't have anyone to look up to, so I didn't know how to do that.
So when you started having procedures as a man at the age of 19, do you think that was actually the start of your journey of becoming a woman? Do you think that's what was really underneath it all?
It was, yeah, it was. So throughout the years, I have been transitioning secret.
So you think it started, you've been transitioning since you were 19, really?
Yes. Yeah, in secret. Obviously, I didn't tell other people because nobody would understand. I didn't understand either, but I knew that I was a woman. But since when I was a child, I knew that I was a woman.
Right.
I knew I was a girl.
Yeah.
And even more so nowadays that I've completed my transition.
And do you feel that your desire to transition was held back for cultural reasons? Is it something that you were afraid of talking about in Brazil? Was that a factor or not?
No, Brazil is I was born in Brazil, but I've been here in this country for half of my life, really, and I live between London and São Paulo. In fact, I go to São Paulo on Friday, then I come back to London, so I'm always on the
Lovely
airplane.
City.
It is, yeah, it's a very big city.
Amazing museum and
nice restaurants, good food, good food, Brazilian
and
food
actually
is
a lot
really
of plastic
good.
surgery. Do you have procedures in São Paulo?
I have had some surgeries there, but the best surgeons for me and for what I needed, they are actually in Thailand and also in Turkey. Yeah.
So we know about people that want to transition. It's the hot topic of the day, of course, and it's I guess a source of debate now in the world and in this country. But what you've done is more than transition, isn't it? Because there are men who identify as female. They have some simple procedures, but you've had over 100 procedures.
I just did everything that I could possibly do to be a woman. I even managed to change my birth certificate. My birth certificate states as Jessica Alves, born as a female. And in all my documents, in all my passports, so my British passport, Brazilian passport, all documents, I am as Jessica Alves, female. So there's no trace of anything leading back to what I was or my past. I don't like to see images of my former self. I don't like to see videos of what I used to look like before. In a way, I'm a very blessed person because now I lived a great life and now I'm living a better life. I am happier than ever. I could never be this happier, really. It's a wonderful feeling to feel fulfilled.
I don't think many people watching will be critical of your decision to transition, because I think it's like being gay. It's not a life choice, it's who you are.
It's who you are.
And that's who you are as Jessica. And I completely understand and sympathise with that. There might be some people watching that are worried about you, though, worried about perhaps your mental health, having so many procedures. Is it good for you? Is it an addiction? Will you be having more?
No. I'm not addicted to plastic surgery. I think that it is, to some people, I'm mistaken by a plastic surgery addict, but I'm not. I was born, I'm a biological male. I was born a man. In order to be this woman that I am, curvaceous, I had to go through a lot of surgeries. This woman lived inside me for many years, and nowadays I'm able to project it. But in order to become the woman that I'm today, I had to have the surgeries. So there wasn't choice for that.
And you don't think you've overdone it with the surgeries?
I don't think so.
No, because it was all about the journey to becoming a woman.
It was all about the journey of becoming a woman. And I'm 100% woman now in everything. And I am tired of having surgeries, of course. I don't enjoy going through surgeries and having surgeries. It's not fun, it's not beautiful. It is painful, it is time-consuming, it is expensive. I just want to have one more nose job and that's it.
Is that it? One more nose job?
And that's it, but I'm also giving a break. I'm enjoying the summer at the moment and looking for a relationship. Eventually I want to get married, have kids and just live a beautiful life.
Yeah, well, look, I wish you well in that, and it's been such a privilege to have you on the show. I'm a libertarian, and I think that people can just live their lives as they so wish, and you've definitely taken your own path. It's taken courage, and a few quid as well, and a few operations.
Yeah.
But one last nose job, is that the deal then?
And that's it.
Right.
And that's it. People, they get so fixated on the amount of money that I've spent on plastic surgery. I see that as an investment, a personal investment to be happy in my life. And we live in a civilized, free country, and we have choices, and we do what we do to make us happy.
One question though.
Yeah.
Are you bonkers?
We all are a little bit, aren't we? Are you bonkers?
Because
we all are a little bit.
I don't think you are. There might be people watching going, very nice lady, good luck to her, but she's off her trolley.
No, I'm not off my trolley at all. Well, I'm off of my trolley only because I had work done.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, they have had plastic surgeries done, but they just don't talk about it. That's it.
It's true.
I'm the opposite. I had the work done. I talk about it. I like to educate people through my experience. I'm quite active on my social network, on my Instagram. So I make Instagram stories. I have more than 6 million followers. And these people, they watch me. They want to know how was my recovery because they learn from my experiences. And that is what I have been doing, sharing my experiences with the public through the press, through television shows that I do, YouTube, social networks, so people can actually learn from my experience. And it hasn't been an easy journey, but this is the final product of everything that I have done throughout the years.
Well, I've got one word for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's your life's work. One last nose job. You're going to come back and see us after it's been done.
Yeah, give me a call. I come back.
Do you know when booked in?
No, I haven't booked it, and then I haven't found the doctor yet. It's been very difficult. Yeah.
Okay.
I've been traveling the world, going to see doctors, and nobody can help me.
While we're here,
so if you know any good doctors, send me on my way. Send me an email.
Any budding plastic surgeons out there? Jessica, do you think I could have anything done? What do you think? I'm a little bit jowly now. I'm in my late 40s.
You're quite
turkey neck.
You're quite handsome. You don't
really?
need anything.
No.
Fine.
A little bit of just a tuck here.
Or a facelift.
Yeah, maybe facelift.
No, don't do that.
No. Bring the bum up a bit, maybe?
Let's have a look.
There's no bum, you'll never find it. Jessica, I wish you well, and I wish you every happiness, and thank you for telling us your amazing story.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. Nice
Brilliant.
to meet you.
And come and join us again soon. Jessica Alves there, fascinating conversation. Check her out on social media. She doesn't do boring. Lots more to come. We've got the papers at 10:30, but next, the queen of US showbiz, political and royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield. See you in 2.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Lots more to get through, but it is time now for US News with the Queen of Political Showbiz and Royal Reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Hey, Kinsey.
Mark, I can't believe it's been a year. Congratulations, and I can't wait to watch your new show.
Really excited about it. Dial Dolan every Saturday from September, 8 till 9 p.m, in which we take video calls from our amazing viewers live on air. If you want to be part of it, just drop me a personal email tonight, mark@gbnews.uk. Kinsey, lots to get through. Of course, it's another big week in terms of US news. And we start with the tragic stabbing of Sir Salman Rushdie, Booker Prize-winning author, who, of course, was attacked in New York City.
That's right. And I do have some updates on this story. Well, Mr. Rushdie, the accuser, the person that stabbed him, charged now with attempted murder, also charged with the attack. This is terrifying. And what we're also finding out is that there was recommended additional security, that people expressed concern that maybe they needed to have metal detectors at the venue, or perhaps they go through people's purses. And for some reason, the venue and the organizers of the event felt like there would be a separation between the speakers and the guests, and that the guests might feel violated. So they did not want to have those extra security, recommendations. It's actually, when we have events like this and they were clearly preventable, it breaks your heart. And it really just, who do we blame? Who do we point the finger at? Because this did not have to happen.
An absolute tragedy. Is Sir Salman Rushdie well known in America, Kinsey?
I'd say in certain circles he is. I meant to add that we do think he has lost his eye. There was damage to, I believe, his liver, stabbed over a dozen times. I would say he's obviously much more known today than he was 2 weeks ago, but he is considered an icon in a lot of circles.
Indeed so. And of course, New York, Kinsey, very much the American capital of sort of intellectual thought, isn't it, really? That's where all the kind of bookish intellectuals live.
Yes, but I would also say to you, New York is also known for how unbelievably scary it's become. New York is known for the crime increase, and it's known for a place that really is not going hard enough on individuals that are committing those crimes. So this was a very embarrassing event for the city of New York. After a slew of them, they have got to get their stuff together. They have got to prioritize law enforcement. And I think that this is one of those events that kicks that into high gear, and you'll see the governor maybe reevaluate some of the recent decisions she's made.
That's right. We could probably do with another Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, the former mayor of New York, who had a zero tolerance policy to crime, and he really cleaned up New York, didn't he, in the 90s?
He did, and he was an icon, especially after 9/11. Unfortunately, his reputation's taken a bit of a hit after the Trump administration, but I do like to remember the good old days with old Rudy Giuliani. He was an incredible mayor of the city of New York.
Definitely, in New York, a far better and safer place on his watch. Let's talk about Arizona. What's happening with the governor there? Because there seems to be a bit of a battle between the White House and what the Arizona governor wants to do.
Right, that's Governor Doug Ducey, and he's stressed because he says he's reached out repeatedly to the Biden administration. Mark, almost 500,000 people have crossed the border in the last year. Arizona is only second to the state of Texas in regards to how many people have crossed the borders illegally. And so the governor, Doug Ducey, what he's doing right now, and also I would say he's out in November, so this is really kind of a legacy move, I truly feel. What he's done is he's taking $6 million worth of shipping crates, and it's about, I believe it's 1,000 feet that they're going to line these shipping crates up around the city of Yuma, Arizona, a border town, because they're trying to limit and create any sort of border wall, trying to limit the amount of people that are crossing the border illegally, because quite frankly, the state can no longer handle it. They cannot handle the amount of people coming through. And yeah, I'm really interested in seeing if this works. It's creative. It's pretty ugly looking, but we'll see what the next governor does. Doug Ducey's out in November. I'm hoping for a Kari Lake domination. Kari Lake is the GOP candidate that wants to be the next governor of the state of Arizona, and she is tough on border. She is tough on immigration, and I think that you'd see a real border wall erected with Kari Lake.
Sounds like a future president to me. And let's finish, Kinsey, on the very, very sad news of the death of Olivia Newton-John, who went on, even though she's not American, to become an American icon in her own way because of her performance in Grease.
You're going to make me cry. You know, I was thinking about this as I was doing my makeup, a little Kinsey Schofield, watching Olivia Newton-John. She taught me everything I know about boys and girls. You know, if he doesn't like you, all you got to do is put on a pair of tight pants and it'll change your life. No, I just love her. You know, Mark, she battled cancer for 30 years. And in the process of battling this cancer, what was she doing? Always looking to help others, whether it was animal charities. She started the Olivia Newton-John Foundation, and she talked about with this foundation how not only, obviously, yes, she'd love to cure cancer, she'd love to help cure cancer, but her goal was to make cancer something that people could live comfortably with. She was just such a selfless human being, and who did not have a crush on her? Who did not absolutely adore this woman? We are going to miss her immensely, her sweet spirit. She was sunshine, and yeah, she was the ultimate karaoke inspo. You name one song, I could drop her right now. God bless her. I'm going to miss her. I really will, because she was joy. She was just joy.
I know you've got the vocal prowess to be Olivia Newton-John. You just need the blonde wig.
That's true. And I've got that in the closet.
And just briefly, Grease itself, I mean, it's one of the most iconic films in the history of Hollywood, isn't it, really? Why was Grease such a big deal?
Well, because it's brilliant. It was the very first movie poster I had, and I think it came out in 1978, and I was born like 10 years later. So the fact that I still had the movie poster on my wall, it's incredible. It's an incredible film. It's fun. It's full of joy. Did you know that Alves almost played the guy that sang Beauty School Dropout? Because I didn't, and that blew my mind. I just recently read that, and I thought, what a different movie. It was brilliant, but what a different movie it would have been had Alves been walking down those steps singing Beauty School Dropout. So it was just an incredible film. The music is just infectious, and the most brilliant casting in the whole wide world. Who didn't want to be a pink lady or a T-bird?
Yeah, like all great art, it never ages. Neither do you, Kinsey. See you in a week's time. Actually, Kinsey, I'm away next week, so lovely Beverly Turner will look after you, and I'll catch you at the start of September.
All right, I will sincerely miss you, Mark. I love your face.
Oh, you're too kind. Brilliant stuff. You've clearly been drinking again. The wonderful Queen of US Showbiz, political and royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Check out her brilliant royal website, todiefordaily.com. It's time now for this. Yes, indeed. It's time for the papers, as always, at 10:30. Just gone 10:30 now. And let's have a look at the front pages, hot off the press. Sebastiano, where would you like to start first? OK, we've got the Star newspaper. We're an equal opportunities broadcaster here at GB News. We'll start with the Star Sunday. There's only two George Bests. Spooked Alex Best says she's been haunted by the ghost of her footy legend ex-hubby and another bloke also called George Best. By George, what are the chances of that? There you go. Can you tell it's the silly season? Independent next, on to much more important and, I'm afraid, tragic matters. Salman Rushdie suspect charged over attack. Hadi Matar, pictured on the front page of The Independent, being arrested on Friday, charged with the writer's attempted murder, a charge he denies. And power stations could be shut off to ration supplies. Gas power stations could be shut off to ration energy supplies as part of emergency plans to stave off widespread blackouts this winter. Sources at 2 power stations, along with government officials, say they were preparing to wargame emergency plans next month and that they've been asked to review measures to keep Britain's lights on in the worst-case scenario of dangerously low supplies. At what point will there be a run on candles, I wonder? Sunday Express next. You are next. Threat to J.K. Rowling after Salman Rushdie horror. An awful tweet received by J.K. Rowling. A death threat upon her after she expressed her condolences to Salman Rushdie for his attack in New York City. And Liz Truss on the front page of the Sunday Express. Truss, I'm on your side. Everyone can thrive. Liz Truss pledge as Sunday Express endorses her as the right person to be our next Prime Minister. Well, folks, that's going to be the topic of tomorrow's big question. Is Liz Truss the right choice for Britain? We'll discuss that tomorrow at 9:20. The Observer next. Starmer to demand halt to autumn hike in energy prices. Labour leader Keir Starmer is to call for a ban on crippling energy price rises this autumn in a move that would save the average household more than £2,000 a year on gas and electricity. Rushdie had started to believe his life was normal again, write The Observer. Salman Rushdie believed, writes Ed Pilkington from New York, that his life was very normal again and that fears of an attack were a thing of the past. He had just made that comment in an interview 2 weeks before being stabbed on stage in New York on Friday. Also, a stunning photograph on the front page of The Observer, Britain's long parched summer. Rushmere Pond on Wimbledon Common in London, demonstrating the very, very dry nature of what's happening in the capital and across the country. Let's go to the Sunday Times now, shall we? Or what have we got next? We're making it up as we go along. Let's have the Sunday Times. And we've got this. America kept secrets of Taliban deal from Britain before the fall of Kabul and planned to cut extra £400 off fuel costs. Treasury cooks up new scheme, but energy firms propose a more radical solution. Freeze bills. Also, water leaks double during the heat wave. And those are your front pages. Let's get full panel reaction now from Ella Whelan, Daniela Westbrook and Chris Akabusi, my all-star panel. We are travelling business class tonight with my panel. Let's get to these front pages. We'll skip George Best for this moment in time. And let's go to the front page of the Express if we can. Chris, you are next. An online threat to J.K. Rowling's life after the attack on Salman Rushdie. A truly horrific situation. Do we need to do more, Chris Akabusi, to protect authors and artists from attack?
I mean, I wonder what you can do in a Western society where you elevate individuality, freedom of expression. We want our celebrities to be accessible. Of course, often they have bodyguards around them. But so many times I've thought to myself when I've been in events and I've seen high-profile people, how actually open they are to threat and exposure. We've seen over the last few years some high-profile politicians who've been attacked, and unfortunately the South End politician, the chap...
David Amess.
David Amess, you know.
That's right. Murdered in cold blood. Joe Fox.
Exactly.
We've also seen, politicians. Nigel Farage was attacked with milkshake, which many people think is an innocuous substance, but I don't like the optics of it. And of course, John Prescott was egged as well.
Yeah, correct. And I don't know what the solution is if you value the sort of open sort of freedom we have in Western society. Well, there are things you could put in place, of course, but then they would then become unaccessible, and there'll be other issues you talk about, the high-profile people who you can't touch, move, and have their being with them. So it's a very difficult challenge we have here, and there's no easy answer to it.
Daniela Westbrook, you're one of the best-known actors in the country. Have you ever felt in fear of your safety?
I did once, but mine was a stalker issue. And, you know, that was dealt with after, it was 6 years every day for somebody, and that was something, you know, much more minor, and lucky enough the lady's now in prison, but
not minor for you?
It wasn't minor for me or my kids or any of my family, because she was in contact with everybody, but I think that's completely, stalking's a different issue to what we're talking about. It's, you know, this has been going on, you know, way back the Kennedys, John Lennon, people assassinated, people attacked, all over the place, and it's, you know, looking, last time I was on the show at Tom Hanks, leaving somewhere, and his wife, someone bumped into his wife, grabbed his wife, and he said something.
That's right.
It's life. You know, that unfortunately it is life, and if you want to get up and have your voice and have your opinion, you should be able to speak on a public stage. There's always going to be extremists. I don't think we can live in a world where we hide away from everybody, because we have a right to speak and converse with people, no matter who we are.
I mean, I don't know if this is relevant, but the slap, the Chris Rock slap from Will Smith.
Yeah, but that was
the
so
Oscars.
staged. He
Was that-
stood there, you
you
stood
think that was-
stand there like that,
100%.
waiting. That was like a stunt
That
move.
might have been showbiz, but I wonder whether it
was.
also set the
100%
tone though for
100%.
it's again like Nigel and the milkshake. It's sort of the optics of it weren't great. The idea that somebody jumps onto a stage and assaults the person with the microphone.
It can happen anywhere, you know. I mean, you know, the Queen's Jubilee, you've got most of the royal family sitting in the royal box. There could have been a sniper somewhere.
Yes.
You know, that happens in America a while back. A sniper, a street thing, wasn't there? And lots of people died. It can happen. There's extremists everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
You know, we can't police and every single event, every single place, unfortunately. It's just so, it can happen to anybody.
Do these public figures need more protection, or is it impossible to legislate for this sort of attack, do you think, Ella?
I think you have to be really specific about what's happened with Salman Rushdie, which is that it's not political protest, an egg or a milkshake, or it's not, you know, bad behaviour. This is, you know, Salman Rushdie had a fatwa put on him, and it was because he wrote a novel which Islamists and extremists from a particular religion or religious fundamentalists said blasphemed against their beliefs. It's a very clear, it's a very specific thing that's happening here. You know, in the last few years, we've had teacher Samuel Paty beheaded in France for showing images of the Prophet Muhammad in his class. We've had a teacher here in the UK but there was the Charlie Hebdo massacre. We've had the teacher here in the UK in Batley Grammar still actually in hiding because of his choice to show some pictures of the Prophet Muhammad in his class. There is a specific issue in relation to Islamist extremism and freedom of expression. And I don't think that having more bodyguards and things like that is going to necessarily solve that. In fact, actually, it's important to note that Rushdie himself was very fervent in his defiance and he was a very courageous man who continued to do public appearances where he could and continued to talk. He never was cowed by the fatwa. Some terrifying thing, having millions of pounds put on your head. That never stopped his belief in freedom of speech and free expression. But what you can do is those of us who should match the courage of someone like Rushdie should come out and say there is absolutely no room anywhere for anyone to be threatening violence against free speech. And that's that's a line you draw in the sand. People have been showing clips of Christopher Hitchens, who was friends with Salman Rushdie today, the late Christopher Hitchens, who makes this point very strongly, which is that we are just in the realms of the inconceivable if you're suggesting that there is any grounds for someone to commit violence against someone for saying things or writing things. And the depressing thing is that there's been a lot of conversation on social media and among some commentators in the last few, in the hours and days after the attack on Rushdie, to say, well, there is something interesting here to be talked about the limits of what you can and can't say and the limits of offence. And you just think, oh my Christ, somebody's been stabbed 15 times in the neck and lost an eye and nearly killed for writing a novel, a great novel, writing a great piece of work that offended you. This is bizarre, and we know that we're, if you people say cancel culture isn't real. People say that free speech is the fight for free speech is all just a storm in a teacup. Well, if it's going to take blood being spilled on a stage in New York for people to wake up, then that's really shocking.
Do you think that the literary establishment and other authors have done enough to have Salman Rushdie's back over the years? And indeed, the artistic establishment? Do you think more people should have spoken out in solidarity with this man back in the day when the fatwa was active?
Yes, I do, and I think there is a lot. It's hard to say who's to blame, but there's a lot to be answered for, particularly in the circles of the arts, where for too long there has been this cowardly approach to free expression and artistic freedom, particularly in relation to religion, and actually particularly in relation to any discussion of Islam, which is that if you say anything critical, if you do anything interesting. I mean, Rushdie worked with magical realism and very obviously what he was writing was fiction, more so than anyone else. And yet still there was this suggestion that he was wrong to do that. He was wrong to speak out. He was wrong to dare to go to those lengths and take those risks in a literary form because of the consequences. And if you have a world of the arts which doesn't believe in taking risks, I mean, you know this from the world of comedy. Yeah. If it doesn't believe in an artist's ability to go wherever they want to go in the realm of the imaginative, then you end up with some quite dark consequences. We've seen in this country, for example, that film being shut down, Cineworld shutting down films that were not critical of Islam, but taking a different view in relation to the Prophet Muhammad. I mean, even things like, remember when Father Ted came out, there were protests against that. There's always been this pushback, but for some reason we seem to have a real blind spot or a real cowardice around Islamist terror. And it's this, we don't know all the details yet, but this looks like it's shaping up to fit into that box of the Samuel Paty murder, of the Charlie Hebdo massacre, of all this kind of this growing threat of Islamist terror against liberal values of freedom and tolerance. And at some point, people are going to have to come out and say, whether it's in the Western world or wherever, we believe in free speech, and we think that if you're an enemy of free speech, then you're an enemy of us. This attack on Salman Rushdie is an attack on all of us.
Which is why the decision to cancel the screening of that film was probably a mistake.
Definitely.
Yeah. An interesting tweet from Wasiq, who's an academic and a Muslim commentator, who tweeted the following. It's gone viral today. The diverse British Muslim community are not snowflakes. We do not need blasphemy laws. Islam is strong enough to handle critique. Muslims, fundamentalists, however, are not. Salman Rushdie should be celebrated for his literary achievements, not condemned to death. Chris? I mean, that's pretty well put. Islam is strong enough to handle critique, but fundamentalists are not. And that's true of all extremism, isn't it?
Yeah, clearly the chap is mentally disturbed if he really went there with the expression to actually stab and kill a person, walk up on stage in the public glare, is obviously not very well in himself. And, any sort of fundamentalism can get very, very extreme. In fact, any sort of ism itself can lead to extreme actions. This is obviously over the top, well articulated, everything that Ellen said, well articulated, so I can't top that. But I don't know what you do when you have these loose cannons who are seriously unwell. What's going to happen to the chap now, and how do you deter other people following in his footsteps?
We've got some more papers hot off the press, courtesy of Tom and the team. We've got the Sun newspaper. Let's take a look at what they're leading with. Max has cheated on me with Maisie. There you go. Ex-Stacey Blast's Strictly star. A classic old-school showbiz story there. And also, great front page, Ronaldo. United had a day to forget yesterday, which has put a smile on my Liverpool-supporting producer Tom's face. Been happy all day. OK, how about the Sunday Telegraph now? Sanction Iran over Rushdie stabbing, says Rishi Sunak. Also, Truss could scrap £400 energy bill help for higher paid. And ministers must overrule NIMBYs and build reservoirs to beat the drought. What do you think about that story? That's an interesting one there. The idea of NIMBYs, not in my backyard. It seems that local campaign groups have blocked plans for reservoirs in the past, Daniela. Do you think that local people power has got too strong now and that the government should say, look, we need these reservoirs in the national interest?
I don't think so. I don't think local people power's got too strong. It just depends on what topic it is. And if it fits the government agenda or not, I think sometimes. And I think we do need, obviously, a lot more reservoirs. And because it helps nature, it helps so many things.
But do you think maybe we just need a conversation about, the green belt, the brown belt, the whole NIMBYism thing, and just say, do you know what? We need houses, we need reservoirs, we need roads, we need more towns, GP surgeries, supermarkets.
We do, but then...
It's time to grow.
It is time to grow, but when it comes down to taking out villages because we need more runways... there's not an issue there.
The government
get a say then.
The government will do that anyway because we've had optics and stuff put food to our doors, but I had no choice. They said they'd come in through your garden. They gave me £100, I think it was. They're coming through your garden and when they lay the lines, so you've got no choice. So. I think
anything dodgy in your garden? Did they dig anything worrying? Any ex-wives?
One of my dogs has been buried in there.
That's your story.
It's disturbing, isn't it, to families and things? It is quite disturbing to them, but, for something
he said he came round and put optics in his house. Well, lucky you. Gin and tonic. Gin and tonic all round. Fascinating stuff. Well, look, more to come. Next up, a topical game show. That's right, a game show based around a news story of the day. And our disposable barbecues, a menace. See you in 2.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
More from the papers now, and all of the UK's major supermarkets have stopped selling disposable barbecues because of the safety fears during the heat wave. Today, one was blamed for causing a huge fire near a nudist beach in Dorset. Blimey, at least they weren't wearing any clothes, right? Nothing to catch fire. Serious story, but it begs the question, are disposable barbecues a menace? Many people think that they're unhygienic, that they're smelly, and that they are a fire risk. What do you think, Ella? Have you ever used one?
I have used one, but I'm surprised that anybody is sitting in dry, scorched grass to use one at the moment anyway. I mean, it's so miserable. Why would you want to sit there and then get even hotter?
Yeah, that's the issue, isn't it? But there is something about the Brits that when the weather's good, we love to get the barbecue on. What do you think about these disposable ones? They're in a sort of metallic tray.
Yep.
They cost about £5.
Yep.
But they are a bit smelly, aren't they?
Look, I think that they can be a good thing in your private garden. The challenge I have is when you see them down in the parks and people are using the disposable barbecue and then they leave them there and go off home and they're smouldering there. That's the danger. Chuck them in the bin, whoosh. So I can see the danger there.
I know, and I've seen, actually, I love going down to the Kent coast, and I think it was Whitstable, where one particular barbecue that hadn't fully extinguished or burnt out was in a bin.
Yes.
And the fire brigade turned up.
Yes.
Waste of everyone's time.
Yeah, and they're stretched as it is at the moment. I just think I lived in California for a long time, and most beaches and parks, if we're going to continue with this, hopefully over the years, have rebuilt barbecues, so communal, everyone can use them, which is a better idea. I just think get rid of them, get rid of fireworks and supermarkets, all of it.
Now you are talking. Well, look, it's time for the Great British Game Show, in which we play a game based upon a news story of the day. Poor old Ryan Giggs is in court. We can't go into detail about it because it's an ongoing case. But it gives us a chance to have a look at some of those ridiculous court sketches of celebrities. So this is Ryan Giggs. I think it's relatively accurate. Actually, I think he looks more like... Who's that Liverpool defender, Tom? Jamie, looks like more like Jamie Carragher.
With the high cheekbones.
Carragher won't be happy with that.
He looks terrible.
There you go. Well, no comment on the trial, but that's a disastrous court image, a court sketch. So we're going to play a game very much in that spirit. So that's right. The name of the game is Sketchy Characters. Well done, team. Let's have a look at our first sketchy character. Which celebrity is this?
Amy Winehouse.
It is Amy Winehouse. Pretty definitive. The beehive hairdo gives it away, and the legs. God bless Amy, we miss her to this day. OK, how about this next celebrity? Who could that be? And it's the person in the foreground. It's the gentleman in the blue shirt.
Bill Cosby?
It is Bill Cosby.
No, never! Oh, never!
I thought it was thinking for me.
They didn't want to look at him while they were drawing him because he's such a dreadful man. OK, how about this guy? Who is this celebrity?
No idea.
Elon Musk.
It is Elon.
Oh,
well done.
Brilliant!
Unmistakable for that jawline. OK, how about our next celebrity?
Oh.
It's not Barbara Windsor.
Let me tell you that...
Big booby.
Tammy Wynette or whatever.
No, it's not anatomically accurate. There needs to be more inflation in that particular sketch.
Katie Price? No.
We need bigger boobs. Just imagine a larger décolleté.
95. Pamela Anderson, that's it.
Not with that hair.
One of the greatest country and western
Dolly
singers.
Parton.
Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton.
Yeah.
Oh, OK.
That's
Who, by the way, is one of my
sketch.
musical heroes. OK, let's power on. We have another celebrity in court.
Oh, it's Rebecca Wade.
Rebecca Wade, latterly Rebecca Brooks from News UK. How about our next celebrity?
Same person.
OK, it's the lady on the left.
Oh, the idiot that went out with Johnny Depp.
It's not. It's not Amber Heard.
Sorry.
She's a pop superstar. She dated... who did she date? Justin Timberlake
Taylor
or someone?
Swift?
It's Taylor Swift is the right answer. There you go. Those are your sketchy... Have we got time? One more? Come on, let's squeeze one more in.
Wayne Rooney.
Wayne Rooney.
Thank you to my incredible panel, and most importantly to you, Field Company. Let's do it all again tomorrow for the last time until September. Mark Dolan tonight. I'm taking the last 2 weeks of August off, so join us tomorrow. And the big question, is Liz Truss the right choice for Britain? See you tomorrow at 9. Stick around for headliners. I'm presenting that too. I present everything here. See you shortly.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking dry and hot for many, but an increasing risk of thunderstorms in the northwest. Let's look at the details. It'll be a grey start for northern parts of Scotland, with low cloud and mist in places, perhaps a few splashes of light rain over Shetland. Sunny spells and scattered showers for Northern Ireland tomorrow morning. Some of the showers could be heavy and thundery. There'll be low cloud for eastern coasts of northern England first thing, dry elsewhere with temperatures quickly rising. Plenty of hazy sunshine in the west. A dry, warm and sunny start to Sunday morning across North Wales and the Liverpool Bay area. Temperatures rising quickly as the strong August sunshine gets to work. Winds will remain light. Any shallow mist or fog patches will quickly clear away from the East Midlands tomorrow morning with light winds and plenty of sunshine. Patches of mist and low cloud will soon burn away from the East Anglia region early on. Plenty of blue skies and hazy sunshine with temperatures well above average. A dry and sunny start to Sunday morning across southern England with any shallow mist patches quickly clearing. Temperatures between 19 and 21 degrees with light winds for all. An increasing risk of thunderstorms for Northern Ireland and Scotland as the day progresses. Hot and sunny elsewhere with highs of 35 degrees Celsius. And that's how the weather's shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Hey,
my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farrow.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all,